for having me. Hope everybody's having a good workshop so far. I was asked to present a little bit on some of the offerings that Skretting has in the hatchery feeds. My name is Tim Harder. My title is Key Account Manager. I work mainly in the Eastern U.S. I generally represent the brand BioOregon. We do a lot of trout and salmon enhancement work for state and federal hatcheries for their stocking programs. I also represent the Skretting brand for commercial production and some of the RAS work. And our warehouse here in Westbrook, Maine is also a distribution point for marine hatchery feeds, which includes rotifer production and enrichment, Artemia replacement, weaning, pre-grower, and some marine brood stock. So it's a wide net. My background is in marine science, and I have tried my hand at seaweed aquaculture before coming to Skretting and BioOregon. And I tell you that because I am not the expert. Our experts are overseas. The good thing about Skretting is that we are worldwide and we have our own research facility in Norway. Also, we have a shrimp research center down in Ecuador that's pretty new. But I lean pretty heavily into the product managers and experts overseas. But we are learning day by day and trying lots of different species here in the U.S., which is also pretty interesting and pretty exciting. You can see this is not an exhaustive list of all the facilities that Skretting has, but on the East Coast of the U.S., that's my little blue dot there, the BioOregon warehouse here in beautiful Westbrook, Maine. And this is something that we had made up for the marine hatchery feeds offerings, I should say, here out of the Westbrook facility. This is not all of the hatchery feeds that Skretting offers, but these are the ones that we distribute here in North America. Happy to provide this after. It's a good snapshot of what we have, and then there's some more detailed information. So the next thing we're going to do, I'm just going to show you a real short video. It'll be review for a lot of you, but it will help sort of understand how Skretting looks at the hatchery just in general and from a feed standpoint. That's a look at the way the needs in the feed world are sort of characterized in the marine fish hatchery world, and you can see in some cases it can get really complicated. So what Skretting has tried to do is simplify this as much as possible, while also allowing for the flexibility for folks in the hatchery to use whichever technique that they feel is best. So it's not a one size fits all solution. As you can see here, there's lots of different arrows and things that could be tweaked and adjusted. And we offer, this is again a look at on a timeline view of the different diet offerings that we have. So the Vitalis for broodstock is not available readily here in the US, but it can be had probably a little bit beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about today. The Ori line focuses on rotifer production and enrichment. And it also, our Ori N3 is also for Artemia enrichment. And then we get into the Gemma line for weaning, Artemia replacement, and then pre-grower. I'd be really interested to hear the next presentation, because if, as you notice, the Skretting slide shows us that hatchery is impossible without rotifers. So I saw the next presentation on the agenda here and was pretty interested in that. So I'll be hanging around for that, of course. The diet production locations for our hatchery feeds are from overseas. I have not been able to see the production process for these, although it is quite technical, which is the need for multiple locations. There's different technical capabilities associated with each different diet line. But the different locations and worldwide logistics can make it a bit tricky. And some of our competitors struggle with it. It's a lot of work on our end. And hopefully we can get over there and look at those more in depth as time goes on here. I'd be really interested to do that. It's an interesting process. So the way I broke this up, we can talk about first the co-feeding strategy. This is assuming that you're starting after hatching from rotifers and switching over to an Artemia feed, and then going through a period of Artemia and our weaning diet, which would be Gemma wean. And the period depends on the physiology of the chosen species. So things like taste bud development, gape size, even vision development, depending on the species. So this is an example from a Barramundi, Asian sea bass, of what a sample weaning period looks like. And this would be when you would be using the Gemma wean from about 16 days post-hatch until the animal is fully weaned. Looks like somewhere around day 28 or so. And there's probably a little wiggle room in there. The Gemma wean diet, and we do have product guides on this for follow-up if folks are interested. It was targeted for some marine species such as sea bass and sea bream, but has also proven effective on a number of other species. And it has the green color because of an algal addition, which is proprietary, but we have seen probiotic effects and also helps with the physical characteristics of the pellet itself. So that's our Gemma wean diet obviously for weaning of marine fishes in the hatchery. And then there's an Artemia replacement strategy. So again, we would start from rotifers. That would be the assumption. And we would switch directly onto our Gemma micro. And once again, depends on the physiology of the species. There are some animals that don't possess taste buds, for instance. So they don't even recognize the Gemma micro as a food source coming off of rotifers. So if it's not moving, they will just completely ignore it, even though it's really good for them. So this is not available for all species, but again, this is a sample Artemia replacement feeding regime. And again, this is for an Asian sea bass here. And you can see they switched right over with some overlap at like day 15 post-hatch. And the Gemma micro, some interesting things about it, highly digestible marine proteins, which is critical, especially when the animal is still developing its gut morphology and gut characteristics. Very concentrated nutrition, and so that fish don't need to consume quite as many individual particles, or don't need to feed quite as extensively as they do on a live feed, which may be less nutritionally dense, before they can have a chance for success. And you can see the diet line on the bottom of the screen there. There's good overlap between the sizes, so that there's no gaps, and we can try to bring the fish along pretty well. Gemma Micro, I know this is kind of a busy slide, especially with our Gemma Micro soccer team there on the side, but we also see early weaning success in hatcheries, to include, you can see papers on barramundi, sea bass. You can see one for sea bream. There's some work that has been done with cod. And here in the US, the Gemma Micro is really targeted at the zebrafish community, and that's basically a market-driven phenomena. It is good for species other than zebrafish, but the market demands here in the US are zebrafish for Gemma Micro, and then really everybody else. So we would like to see here at Skretting, we'd like to see more folks adopting this for more different species. But right now, the bulk of our Gemma Micro sales do go to zebrafish, if you're familiar with any zebrafish labs. So factors to consider when working with manufactured feeds in your hatchery: uniformity of size and shape. So again, there is some overlap, but there is, and that's why we have so many different size classes, if you will, of feed, because they are very uniform in size, but you do want that overlap. So we make multiple different product lines to ensure there's less gaps. And the shape is very round. It is part of our cold extrusion process to create microparticles that have a very smooth shape, no sharp edges, and no weird size length to width ratios, and so on and so forth. It's a fairly round pellet, and they're fairly uniform from particle to particle. This does mean, though, because of the sizes involved, that all the ingredients need to be micronized, need to just basically be ground beyond what you would have seen in, for instance, a trout feed or a salmon feed. There's an additional step of grinding that needs to be done so that the particles can fit into the pellet, and we can have homogeneous nutrition from pellet to pellet. One other thing that we've done, the particle analysis. So instead of sieving particles as they come off the production line to get rid of fines, Skretting has had to develop different methods, different quality control methods for their particle analysis. So if you think of a sieve, a long, thin particle could potentially pass through a sieve, but may not really be the right size. So they've actually used visual analysis to analyze the particles and help us control our quality before passing the lot and making it ready for sale. The pellets can actually roll, which is a demonstration of how round they are, and how uniform the length and width are from pellet to pellet or from particle to particle. Something else that you want to think about is sinking speed. You want the pellet available in the water column for as long as you can, as fish are learning to feed. Also, your choice of ingredients and choice of suppliers has to be an important factor. They have to be high quality ingredients because, as I mentioned, these are nutritionally packed pellets, and the idea is that fish don't need to eat as many of them as they would have to eat of a live feed. So you have to make sure that the nutrition is in there is highly digestible and of the highest quality, which puts a lot of stress on our supply chain, which obviously we're able to handle, but is a consideration. Also, the formulation consistency, and again, going back to our zebrafish friends, huge consideration with them, especially when they're doing studies. The consistency and formulation from batch to batch is very, very tight. And palatability. The fish have to want to eat it. If the fish sense that it's there, it has to be palatable, and it has to be easily digestible. So we use hydrolyzed proteins, which help kind of break things down and make it easier for primitive guts to absorb the nutrition that they need. And that's something else that the cold extrusion process does is it does not denature proteins as other extrusion processes would do. So it makes them much more natural for the animal to digest. So when we talk about microfeeds, especially in a hatchery, you want them to be really clean in the water. And this is an example. This is one of our slides. The control is actually one of our competitors. And you can see when they let the pellets soak for 10 hours, you can see the amount of leaching that comes from oils and fats getting into the water column. That's our Gemma Wean in the middle, which is a drastic improvement. And all the way on the right is our Gemma Neo. This is sort of our next generation hatchery feed, co-feeding diet that actually has micro-encapsulated oils. And you can see it actually creates a bit more stability within the water column. Excuse me. Something else to think about is physical characteristics or physical properties of the feed. You want it to be free flowing. You don't want it to get jammed because it's small feed. You generally have small feeders. You're using pipettes. You're using smaller equipment to deliver smaller amounts of feed, and you need something that's free flowing and will not get jammed, not get stuck. It's something else to think about is what happens when the feed enters the water. So all of our feeds attempt to achieve, again, this is a slide from our Gemma Neo presentation, which they've really taken it to the next level, but you can see the spread of the feed in the water, again, making the feed available to as many fish as possible. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is our pre-grower feed. So once you have a fully weaned animal, they're going to grow very, very rapidly before you put them into a production tank or move them into your on-grower stage. And for that, we offer the Gemma Silk. The Gemma Silk diet it is available out of the Westbrook warehouse. It's got a lower sinking speed. They actually put it in, comes in 16 kilogram bags. We actually, the bags weigh 16 kilos. We put 20 kilograms of our other diets in there, but the Gemma Silk is less dense. And so that's why we can only get 16 kilos in there. And I tell you that because the less dense pellet particles have the lower sinking speed. They have better suspension and flow, and they remain available to these young fish in the water column for much longer. You can see the formulation does not change over the size because the fish are growing so fast. There's no reason to do that. Again, only the highest quality raw materials are used for Gemma Silk, and it's made with our ProTech concept, which I'll get into. I'm just going to go through here just a very quick case study here before I finish up. This is one of our partners over in Turkey. You can see they have quite impressive production capacity, both sea bass and sea bream. They even do some salmon. The slide's a little outdated, so I don't know if they got the 30 metric tons a year. But they did build a hatchery facility in 2017 and started working with the Gemma Silk specifically. And they used it before they transferred out into the Aegean and out to the Black Sea. So they're using an open system with an underground water source with earth and line ponds. And they did some fish counting and transfer, as you can see, just kind of flying through here. I don't expect, because this is sea bass and sea bream, it's a little bit different than what you're talking about. But you can see they started their fish at 1 gram on the Gemma Silk 0.8 feed and took it all the way up. They're actually now, and they've stayed with this program, gone to using the Gemma Silk all the way up to the 1.5. And what gains did they see, right? So with Gemma Silk as compared to what they were using before, which was an in-house mix for their nursery, they saw less mortality, faster growth, a stronger immune system, and I just kind of alluded to it. Our ProTech system, our ProTech concept is something that we build into these hatchery feeds, which helps with gut gut health and gill health and skin health and a couple other factors. So you just kind of overall are creating a more robust animal, and immune response is one of those things. So you do see the stronger immune system. They had a shortened production period. Their grading was better. There was less spread of sizes across the entire cohort. They did note the improved water quality, and the feed was more appetizing for the fish. So it allowed them, in this particular case study, to focus on the nutrition and production of their larger feed sizes instead of worrying about nursery feeds. And so this is just a couple illustrations. You can see the total number of fry went up, the mortality went down. They had less antibiotic usage, and so on and so on. So I won't bore you to tears with the details, but you can see for sea bass and sea bream, they reduced their time into the grow phase, and reduced cost. And again, for these commercial operations, that really is the take home, right? So their water quality was better. It allowed them to produce produce in higher intensity levels in their ponds with less diseases, almost getting the FCR dropped, and they were seeing good feeding behavior. So that's the Gemma Silk, and that's all I have. I think I'm right at my time here. But thank you very much for allowing me to present, and I will be available at the end of this session for questions.